an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 3, Episode 6. Hi, Infidelity. In this episode, it's a pretty good title. They do puns all the time, but I think this one might be my favorite. Also, guys, I am having such mixed feelings about what is happening here. I leave you to interpret what thing I feel this way about. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Agnes for commissioning this episode. So, y'all, I'm going to just do the thing that I do, which is talk about the thing that I am the most interested in right out of the gate. And as of right now, the thing that I am the most interested in by far is Keith Mars. So let's talk about this, okay? This is one of those things that's like just all too familiar. So Keith Mars is a single father with an ex-wife. They did get officially divorced, right? Who is a very smart, upstanding gentleman doing an excellent job as a father. Very good relationship with his daughter. Overall, the kind of dude that we wish there were more of in the world. And thus, I have a really hard time being mad at him for making the decision that he makes in this episode. That is something that I say purely, objectively, without trying to put my baggage into the situation. Rachel's here in the chat. Hi, Rachel. But let's go ahead and add the baggage, shall we? So I've talked about this before. I really don't keep a lot of secrets with the way that I live my life and do the show. Most of you know that my relationship with Owen began while I was still married. I was talking to him online, and me and Brendan had agreed to divorce by the time that I met Owen in person. But we were still in the end stages of our marriage, even though we had both agreed that a divorce was for the best and imminent. It was understood that we were going to not be tacky and immediately jump into a thing with somebody else. Well, hi, I am tacky. And the problem was that I had been involved talking with him before we did officially decide that we were getting a divorce. And Owen was a certain factor for me. But Brendan did not know about that at the time. So the thing is, Owen is absolutely meant for me. This dude is perfect for me. Like, there's just no question at all. And I met him and I knew. And when I met him in person, it was a spur of the moment decision that I still think about whether I should have made that choice or not. Brendan found out that I had been talking to Owen, that things had gotten pretty serious between us, pretty much flipped out. I asked him, do you want me to go stay somewhere else tonight? He said, yeah, I think I do. And I said, okay. And I texted Owen and was like, so Brendan just found out. Things have blown up. I don't know what to do. And Owen said, well, you could come here. And I was like, oh my God, I could. And he bought me a plane ticket and I was there that night. Was that a smart, compassionate thing to do? Debatable. Compassionate to whom? However, do I regret it? I really don't, is the thing. In a lot of ways, I wish that I had been better, treated Brennan better, been more adult about how I handled everything. But there is something about the feeling you get when you know if you don't do this thing, you will genuinely regret it the rest of your life. And that was what I was sitting there when he texted me, you could come here. I was sitting at my computer thinking, my God, if I look back at my life, this moment is going to be something I remember. And the choice I make here is going to determine a lot of what happens next. I genuinely had that thought and was like, I've got to do it. I got to meet him. And this moment where Keith gets in this car accident, his life flashes before his eyes, and he realizes that he will regret not doing it more. Was it the right thing to do? Maybe not. But I really, really get it. And I kind of ship the two of them, to be honest. And am I a little bit disgusted with Harmony? Sure, I am a little bit. You know, this woman suspected that her husband was cheating. She kind of like hoped he was, because there was a reason for her to divorce him then. And now she has a reason, which is that she is unhappy, but is choosing, rather than divorcing him, to then do the thing that she didn't want done to her. Super unfair, really selfish, extremely just like, it's not the way in an ideal situation that we would behave as grown-ups who are looking out for one another and respecting each other after being in a relationship for however long. But I get it, though. I really do. And I never thought that I would say that, you know, as somebody who growing up, one of my parents had an affair, and I really had a lot of contempt for them. For that, the fact that they stayed in a relationship they weren't happy with because they were too scared to leave while still involved with somebody else. I just didn't respect that. But as I've gotten older, I really realize how easy it is to rationalize to yourself why staying is better for everyone, or why staying is maybe like going to work out in the end, even though right now it's not great. The ends justify the means, in other words, is something that we tell ourselves for why we stay in situations that are bad for us and bad for other people. And it is crazy the amount of sort of mental gymnastics that we can perform to make things okay. So the two of them are not behaving in an ideal way. If we were looking at this and saying, what would we do if we had all of our, what do they say? How do they say that? If I had my druthers, if we had our druthers, Harmony would realize she's super unhappy. She would realize the fact that her husband being gone for the couple weeks he is, being a massive relief, is a fucking red flag. The fact that she is propositioning a dude is a red flag. And she should get out of this relationship before she talks to Keith. That is what we want her to do. And we want Keith to demand that of her before he agrees to do this. But life isn't that fucking cut and dried. It's not that straightforward a lot of the time. And I love this car accident being the thing. Because, first of all, the car accident is so sudden. This was done really well. I really like jumped and put my hand over my mouth when the car struck him. And I was genuinely about to be like, oh my God, did something happen to him? Like, I wasn't sure where the show was going with this. And I almost wondered if like the dude in the car that hit him was going to have something to do with the whole situation. And instead, all it is a reminder that you don't get to put your life off, and things can be over at any time. Anytime. Anything can happen at any moment. And you have to live simultaneously knowing that that's true, and also trying to like plan for the future as best you can. But that moment of it making everything crystal clear to him, and him being like, oh my God, I sat there not sure if I would regret going or regret not going more. And now it's absolutely been distilled down to its most essential parts, and I know precisely what I regret. I really, really liked this. And I like the fact that Veronica knows what the fuck is going on. She's not an idiot. She sees her dad doing this, and her dad is trying to be like, we're adults. We're just friends, sweetie. Come on, Keith. That's the only thing about this that I found. It's not even like I'm mad at him for it, because he has to say this. He wants to spend time with Harmony. He can't be like, yeah, I know this is a really bad idea, right? And then just go and be the Keith Mars that we know. He can do that, like, kind of in the back of his mind. But he has to say to Veronica that this is no big deal. And the fact that she is aware and that he keeps insisting that there's nothing to it, we're just friends. Again, you got to tell yourself this sort of thing. This is what I did when I first started talking to Owen, when we moved from joking around publicly on Twitter to DMing and flirting privately. And I was just like, well, we're just flirting, whatever. It's fine. It's no big deal. It doesn't mean anything. You tell yourself whatever the fuck. We really are so good at that. It's astonishing. So this whole subplot, I am really, really interested in what happens here, because Veronica, she can get up on a high horse about this and be really insufferable if she wants. And she's not going to be wrong, you know? But she's also not going to be quite right. Or at least she won't be quite compassionate. She won't be taking everything into account. And I suspect she'll have a similar reaction to the reaction that I had when I found out one of my parents was having an affair. Just being like, really? Come on. You know better. You've seen what this sort of thing leads to, because of, like, his line of work a lot of the time has to do with couples cheating on one another and estranged spouses and the whole thing. So I am worried about how harsh she's going to be when she sees Keith next, and the way that she's going to talk to him about it. Because it is left beyond a shadow of a doubt at the end of the episode that she knows what the fuck he did. She comes to give him breakfast in the morning, and he's not there. It's very straightforward. She knows he was at a hotel last night buying 2 martinis, you know? And Keith, what is he going to say? Will he explain to her about the car accident? Will he talk her through his entire mindset here? Will he regret it? Will he wake up and be like, oh my God, I did this thing because I was just like hyped up on the fact that I nearly died and I thought I would regret not going. But now that that is sort of in my rearview mirror, now I regret going. Will he have a total change of heart in the morning? Will he attempt to lie to Veronica, even though we know that she's not an idiot and so does he? I don't know. I'm excited to see, because this is real life shit, man. It's messy. You know, we want to keep the way that we feel and behave in easily compartmentalized little boxes. And it just doesn't work that way, man. It just don't. And I think all the time about what would have happened if I didn't come to Texas. And I don't know. I imagine that Owen and I still would have wound up together. Maybe things would have been different somehow in the way that we got together. But I can't say with any real honesty that I regret doing what I did. And I am happier for it now. And Brendan is definitely happier for it now, even though it was really bad for him for a while there. You know? So anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I very much enjoy the chemistry between the two of them. And I think that Harmony, I love the moment where she asks him if he wants to use the hotel room that she got, and he declines, and she says that she's ruined everything. I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched Desperate Housewives, but there is a subplot in a later season where Felicity Huffman's character, she falls in love with somebody, and it is very clear he is also in love with her, but neither of them ever acknowledges it, and they hang out a lot. And it is oftentimes in a sort of romantic situation, but they never acknowledge that it is. They never kiss. They never say anything like that to one another. But the chemistry is just bonkers. And eventually he says that he's in love with her, and she screams at him that he has ruined everything. She could pretend when he hadn't said anything that this was just, they both had strong feelings, but that they were both agreeing not to do anything about it. But as soon as he said the words, now she can't see him anymore. Now she has to call it quits. Now that's the line drawn in the sand. And her reaction just being like, oh my God, I've ruined it. I really felt for her. This is when you've been in a marriage and you feel really lonely and completely disconnected from the other person. The feeling of aliveness that comes when you meet somebody is like pouring water on a plant that is half dead and it forgot what water even was. So there's this grasping sort of desperation that in some ways is selfish, but in some ways is also just being a human being and needing a thing. And her being so sorry that she said it out loud and wishing she could take it back and erase the fact that she mentioned that at all from the conversation. Yeah. So I kind of want the two of them to work out, but she really does need to leave her husband though. But what does that look like? Her husband has a case for infidelity if he were to get his own private investigator, and he could potentially leave her with nothing. I don't even know what she does for a living and if she could manage by herself, but depending on if they have a prenup or, what the divorce attorneys decide how they handle it, this could be very disastrous for her if she did try to pursue it. And she may feel this way about Keith now and begin to feel like maybe it wasn't totally worth it once things begin to genuinely fall apart. Meanwhile, Keith, if she doesn't leave her husband right away, has to come to terms with the fact that he's the other man. And is that something that he's willing to just be? Because I don't see it. Keith is a guy who wants solidity and stability. So he might be willing to do this with the idea of eventually being the main guy. But I will imagine, if she tries to keep him on the hook like that, is not going to be particularly patient about it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm super, super curious about this. And I really like this storyline being as complex as it is. And I love that they found an actress that has such good chemistry with him, because this is the sort of thing I could see being an incredibly tedious storyline if you didn't believe that the two people involved actually needed to be around each other. That chemistry is something that is so hard to quantify, but it's definitely there between the two of them. And it makes everything so much more understandable, So, okay, let's move on to the other topics of this episode, because the way this one starts out is I had been, theorizing what it meant when, I can't remember the blonde's name who claimed that she was raped. I had been theorizing if that was her boyfriend. Did she just fake this entire thing? Claire is her name, right? Oh, Rachel says, yep. Thank you, Rachel. And it turns out, yes, indeed, she did fake the whole thing. And she's trying to argue with the dean about it. But, and I might have been willing to be like, maybe her own boyfriend raped her. That's not an unheard of thing. But the fact that she lied to Veronica about knowing the guy in the photo. Honestly, this is just not a very well thought out lie that she told. And the fact that she shaved her head for this lie is tragic. Girl, come on. So she's in the dean's office being told that she is expelled. Meanwhile, Rachel says, yeah, when you said you were going to hate it if that was the case, I also hated it. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second, Rachel. Meanwhile, out in the waiting room outside the dean's office is Veronica and the editor of the student paper, who was pressuring her to turn in a story about the sorority being involved in the rapes. And when the dean calls them in, he has a problem with the editor. He says, I found out the details of this story from the other paper because you guys didn't publish anything about it. And she says, well, yeah, I hesitated to publish something that was suggesting that the rapes were all faked. We're sitting on a powder keg. And the dean responds, I didn't see you being that cautious when you accused the fraternity of being involved. So you're obviously not unbiased here, and I can't have that. So you are no longer going to be running the paper. And honestly, he's 100% correct. Whether or not all of the cases then come under scrutiny and people begin to believe that all of them were faked or not, you have to tell the truth about the fact that this girl did this. And that is the problem with false rape accusations, is that you can have one false accusation and all of a sudden the 11 fucking other genuine cases fall under scrutiny, which is why false accusations are so incredibly poisonous. But they do exist. They are a tiny fraction of the number of real cases, but they do exist. And I find it incredibly disappointing that this show has decided to make the feminists and the women involved in this part of the story these harpies. There is no other word to describe the way they are being presented. We have women who are sniping at Veronica for turning in accurate information. They claim they want her investigating this, but then they get mad at what she turns up. They get angry that she uncovered the fact that they are lying. Well, then maybe just don't lie. How about that part? Just don't lie, and this wouldn't be a fucking problem. The editor of the paper gets in Veronica's face saying, you're going to regret this because she got fired. You made a bad call. This has nothing to do with her. You obviously are biased because you are pushing this thing with the fraternity houses and the sorority houses being culpable when you have no idea if that's actually true or not. The whole thing is a conservative's idea of what happens regarding rape cases on college campuses. This is a highly colored, extremely problematic, and incredibly biased story that they are telling on this show. And I find it insulting and offensive. And I really don't know what the fuck they think they're doing. I don't know why they thought this was the way to tell this story. I feel like it's doing a massive disservice to young women everywhere on college campuses who are genuinely trying to fight for the right thing. For them to be portrayed in this light of just being like anti-man and anti, like, it's like they are trying to just be anti-masculinity in general. And anybody who falls under these couple of titles, like the fraternities and the sororities, they are being portrayed as unfairly maligned. Oh, they really want to find some dirt on the sorority house, when in fact, all of these girls are really nice people, and that weed was medicinal. Really? Are we doing this? Like, what are you... look, all right, look. Whether or not on an individual level, everybody in a fraternity and a sorority are terrible people is untrue. That doesn't have anything to do with the overall culture surrounding fraternities and sorority houses. And the fact that the show is trying to turn them into these like persecuted innocents is really laughable. And the women who are accusing because they have been violated are suddenly the fucking villains of the piece and turning around and faking it. The idea that women in this position would ever do that in order to make a point is so incredibly gross. I would really like any sort of precedent shown to me where something like this has occurred. And I really find this deeply offensive. And I don't know. I'd be very interested to see if the writers feel a way about this after the fact. Because it's been a while since this aired, right? I wonder if they look back on their work here and kind of wince at it. Because I fucking would. I'll be honest. And I don't know. It's the sort of thing that is so laced with contempt for victims, whether that be intentional or not. And the way that this girl is getting nailed to the wall because she lied. And the editor says, is this what you wanted, to Veronica? Like it's Veronica's fault. Again, don't lie. Don't put, this whole thing is just, the characters are contemptible. And the fact that they decided to handle a campus rape story this way is just, it's kind of despicable, to be honest. And I am looking at this and realizing that we still have a fair amount of this season to go. This is episode 6. There are 20. So there are going to be 14 more episodes on this, because I assume this mystery doesn't get solved until the final episode of who's been committing the rapes and what's been going on. I am not excited about it. I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I am really worried about the fact that they have handled it this poorly already, and I have so much longer to go. There is a lot that they could continue to do wrong. There are more depths that they can plumb with the way that they portray victims. I really, really hate it. And to put all of that together with another thing that not only is frustrating to watch, but also feels to me out of character. There is the whole thing with what's her face? Oh man, I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting names. I have so much space between these episodes that I'm not getting in the name practice that I normally get. But the girl that was raped that comes to bowling. Rachel says, I don't know what to say about what's coming that wouldn't be a spoiler. That's fair. I'm trying to be honest with you guys. You know, I know you can't reassure me. You can't warn me. Either way, that's a spoiler. But I want to be straightforward with you all about how I'm feeling right now about this. And it is not good. Parker. Fucking Parker. God, I wish I could remember that. She doesn't look like a Parker. There's this whole thing where she runs into a dude at the radio station and she recognizes the scent of his cologne. And it gives her kind of a flashback to the night of her rape. And she believes that that is the cologne that her rapist was wearing. And Veronica decides to do a little digging and she goes through this guy's room and finds a pair of hair clippers. Guys, does it seem like this is worthy of going to Sheriff Lamb about? Because I don't think so. Cologne is something that is mass produced. And I guarantee that there are at least 20 guys on that campus who wear the same cologne. At minimum. Oh, he owns a pair of hair clippers? How dastardly. I mean, most guys own hair clippers if they ever have cut their own hair or if they have a beard or facial hair. Just the possession of clippers is absolutely nothing. That is totally circumstantial. Both of these things mean next to nothing. And the fact that Veronica goes to Sheriff Lamb with this is just, I don't really buy that that is completely in character. I could understand her kind of accusing the dude because we have seen her make accusations with sort of little evidence before, especially against Weevil. But going to Lamb is a totally different thing. And then Lamb says something about how they found this drug in amongst the cash that they what do you call it? Confiscated. And I can't decide whether or not he is being honest. And that is something that's like, because we have this weird setup at the end of the episode where that dude has all of the stuff in his car, and I can't tell if that was genuine or not. He seemed to not know anything about what was going on there. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the guy, what was his name? The guy who accused Veronica of being a cheater in the first place. So I didn't understand his connection to the dude at the, or I might have this wrong, to the dude in the, I wish I knew everybody's names. I'm sorry, guys. This is part of what's so tough for me with like covering these so far apart. She says Tim the TA. Tim the TA? He was the one who's had the drugs in his car? Oh, okay. Rachel says, oh no. Okay. We got our wires crossed there. I was about to be like, oh shit, I really misunderstood what was happening there. She says, just a sec, I'm getting confused. Same. I'm going to just jump forward on that and because I have the episode playing in front of me here and see if I can find that spot. But it seemed like he had no idea what was going on when they opened that trunk. So, and it comes right after Logan tells her, hey, this dude is being accused, and he's innocent. I was with him. I can't tell you what I was doing, but I promise he was, he's not guilty. And it was a sort of a weird, yeah, okay, it is the guy, the room service dude. Let's see. She says, Mercer is the one who had the GHB. Right. And he was also the one who was running the illegal casino. Ratner is the guy who accused her. And Ratner turns up with a bunch of, oh no, it's not drugs. I thought that this was supposed to be GHB. This is a bunch of soaps and shampoos and stuff from the hotel that are in the trunk of his car. And he says that he didn't put those in there. But Veronica has this reaction when she is told by the TA, oh, you thought Ratner accused you. So Veronica set him up, right? And then realizes that she done fucked up and it wasn't him at all. That's what happened. All right. Now it's all straight. I thought that those bottles and stuff were all, because I didn't get a good look at them, I thought that they were all supposed to be like drugs and that it was supposed to be a link between him and Mercer with the GHB. Totally misunderstood. Okay, good. Now we're back on the right track, because I was like, how does this guy even tie into this? So anyway, Veronica goes to Lamb with this, and he has this idea, even though Mercer evidently isn't guilty. I really want to know what the fuck Logan is thinking, telling Veronica, I'm like, he's not guilty, we were together, but I can't tell you what I was doing. Logan, I understand that you feel like she needs to learn to trust you, and like, I'm not even trying to say that's not true, but I don't know. In my relationships, I don't really think there is a situation in which I would genuinely not want to tell my significant other what I was up to unless I was up to no good, unless I was cheating or doing something that I knew that they would wholeheartedly disapprove of. And if she would disapprove, and that's really the worst of it, is that she'd disapprove, get the fuck over it and tell her already. Who cares? Shut up. And if you're not cheating, then she will have to get over it too. But I really want to know why Logan is trying this fucking tactic of just being like, I promise he's not guilty. You just have to believe me. You just have to trust me. You know what, sir? If you really know that to be true, you're going to have to suck it up, and you're going to have to tell her the truth, and you're going to have to tell the cops the truth. I don't know what else to tell you, because Veronica is gonna find out one way or another what the fuck you were doing. That's literally her job, So I just get so frustrated with these kinds of things where it's like, we're just going to draw out this inevitable thing where of course she's going to figure it out. And you're going to be relying on her to be able to prove that he was where you say as well, more than likely, if you don't want to be the one to tell the cops but you want him to get off the hook. You're going to have to be able to prove that he was there. And that is going to draw her into this whole thing anyway. So you may as well just tell her. Come on. So I'm going to back up again, but I just kind of wanted to deal with the whole thing with the rapes and the way that the show has chosen to handle this, because I really, when did this season come out? I'm trying to see, but Hulu doesn't seem to have that listed. I really just thought we had all agreed by this point that doing a whole thing with false rape accusations was just not a good look. And the idea that this person, like that these women who were trying to, 2006, thank you, Rachel. The idea that these girls who are handling the PR, so to speak, for a bunch of victims who were raped, thought that adding another rape to the pile would make a difference. It's just, I guess, that they were targeting that newspaper that they don't like, that mocks them. And so it's another instance of the writers being like, oh, you know, these feminists, they just want to shut down anybody who doesn't agree with them, kind of thing. It's just the same sort of bullshit that I see in comment sections where people try and be like, well, if it was such and such that happened, then how would you feel? And they always bring up some shit that would literally never happened or has never happened. There's no precedent for it. And it always sounds like this. It always sounds like this kind of plot that they're trying to reach for. And it grosses me out because, you know, as much as you want to say, oh, well, this is fiction. This has nothing to do with what actually happens in real life. Fiction has a major impact on how people view the world. And if they see this sort of thing being perpetrated in fiction and them kind of getting away with it or managing to accomplish certain goals by doing this, that sticks with people and that increases their skepticism of folks in the real world. It has an impact, you know? So just trying to behave as if this is nothing but a story you're telling. When you're dealing with this kind of subject matter, you don't get to do that. You don't get to sort of divorce yourself from the reality of rape victims and what they struggle with. It's not responsible and it's not honest, you know? So, okay, let's go talk to, this whole thing with Veronica being accused. So Veronica, after having this run-in with the editor of the paper, who's like, you'll regret this. Veronica's in her criminal psychology class, or it's not even psychology, it's just criminal law class, I think, right? And she is given the only A out of the entire class. And the professor posts her paper up as an example of an A paper. And everybody is sort of like eyeballing her for, as somebody puts it, throwing off the curve. And she realizes that she is extremely unpopular on campus today. However, the TA, who is extremely salty at the fact that the professor just told him to go and make copies and has gone to have lunch with Veronica instead, gives her such a dirty look. And immediately I started to be like, oh yeah, he's going to fucking trip her up. It turns out that he does, but it doesn't seem to be for the reasons that we initially would have thought. He sort of suggests that it's ridiculous for Veronica to think that he would do this just because he doesn't like her. And as it turns out, at least according to him, there is a deeper reasoning behind it. So the first thing that happens is she gets called into his office and accused of plagiarism because they run papers through a program that checks for phrases that are used from other data banks of papers and articles and things like that so that they can find out if anybody is just fucking copy pasting things, which I will be honest, I have been guilty of in my days. I think all of us have. And this, obviously, this is not what happened. Veronica's not cheating, you know? And this guy is so smug and so happy to accuse her of cheating that I instantly was like, it has to be him, right? He, however, seems to have, because we've got this other dude, Ratford, who claims he's the one who accused Veronica of cheating. And I can't tell, did Ratford genuinely believe she had cheated, or did he run the paper through the thing and the TA knew that people were going to be doing that once they saw that she had gotten the only A in the class and sort of loaded up her paper in order to prepare for that eventuality? Or were they teamed up here? Because Ratford seemed very sincere in his contempt for Veronica. So I think maybe the TA just was like, oh yeah, somebody is going to run the paper through because they hate the fact that she got the only A. I'm going to go with that being the overall plan that he had. But she is able to trace back, using the help of the dude that Wallace went to for cheat papers. She is able to go to a website that actually lists the email address of the person who uploaded the paper. And while it says that it was posted a year ago, once they dig into it a little bit more, it was posted a day or two after she submitted her paper. So it's very clear that she is not guilty. However, the name on the email address is not a actual student. It's an at Hearst email address, which I do find hilarious. But it turns out that he wanted her to find it, piece together who it was. So that's why it was so obvious. Because otherwise, I was like, you can literally make any email. You can make an at Gmail, you can make an at Yahoo, whatever. Why would you use your actual email? And once you find out that this was all a crumb trail for her to follow, then I was like, okay, I get it. But she figures out that the IP of when they uploaded it was from the Neptune Grand Hotel, which is where Logan is staying, and it's where later on Harmony and Keith get together. And she has a contact at the front desk because of Logan having made friends with people, who is willing to help her out and give her a call when this person who checks in fairly frequently checks in again. And she's trying to go to the room to confront this person. And when she gets to the room, the dean's wife opens the door. And I will tell you what, I thought it was going to be the engineering teacher who was in the room with her. I didn't understand why he would set Veronica up, but there seemed to be a little bit of a look that passed between the two of them when she comes into the office, when Wallace is being sentenced, for lack of a better word. And I kind of thought that maybe the two of them were involved with each other. But it turns out it is her professor who is coming down the hallway as she heads back, kind of puzzled, to the elevator bank. And he comes out and she realizes, oh my God, he's with her. And she says, Rory Finch, as he is about to turn the corner, and he sort of turns and looks at her. And there's a moment, I think, where he realizes that she has pieced this all together. And I want to know what he's going to do about it. Because this could go either way. She has dirt on him. So she could lean on him and get him to, give her preferential treatment if she were that kind of person who felt like blackmailing. Or he could try and discredit her in an attempt to get out in front of the whole thing so that if she ever were to use this information against him, it wouldn't look like she was telling the truth, or she wouldn't be in a position to do it, or whatever. Like, there's also the third option that essentially nothing changes and we both just pretend that we don't know about each other knowing. But I don't feel like Veronica is that type. He might be that type. He might be somebody who just sort of tries to pretend that it never happened. But I don't think she would do that. So when she goes and talks to Tim afterwards, he is very clear about the fact that she has no proof that he actually did it. And he's so smug, and I hate him so much. And then he's like, I wanted you to get an idea of who he was before you got too close to him. And he tries to frame this as if it's for her own protection, but it really just feels like sour fucking grapes. This really feels like I've been replaced as the star student, and I'm going to try and ruin things for you a little bit and pretend that it's me being benevolent somehow, when in fact I'm just fucking salty and I don't like this guy and I just kind of want to throw a wrench in things because fuck all y'all. And that's really what it feels like to me. The idea that this dude is having affairs, because he mentions that, like, the dean's wife is new. This is not somebody that, you know, he was even necessarily aware of. He just knows that that's the name this dude uses. I will confess, when he comes to Veronica and tries to tell her, hey, I want to be your faculty advisor. I think that you are extremely smart. I'm not saying this to be nice or supportive. I'm saying this because it's true. And I think that you should pursue this as your major. As much as he was saying all of the right things, whenever there is a man of that age dealing with college girls, my hackles rise. I'm sorry, but there is just so much fucking bullshit around that sort of, like, alleged, what's the words that I want here? Mentor-protege relationship. And as a young girl, I was approached by guys who seemed to be looking out for me and offering to help me. And I look back now, and they 100% wanted to fuck me. Maybe they weren't trying to. They weren't actively attempting to fuck me, but they 100% wanted to, and that was the genuine underlying reason why they approached me. It was not my talent. It was not because they wanted to encourage me. They wanted to be around me, and they were low-key hoping that maybe it would develop into something. And maybe they aren't going to push it that way. But if it does, it does. And I can't be blamed. That is what I kind of thought was happening there. I didn't want to buy that because I would like for there to be a dude who isn't a creep. But when it turns out that he's having an affair, this isn't the first one that he's had, that there are a bunch of probably other, like, students in the past that he maybe is, like, fucked around with, honestly, not surprised at all. That, however, being said, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have shit to teach her. You know, you can be a scumbag and still be good at your job, unfortunately. And if she knows and manages to sort of sidestep him coming onto her, maybe she can still make use of the guy and leverage him into doing well at the school. So, I don't know. But it is the fact that she gets accused of plagiarism is just so frustrating to watch, because we know so completely how that is not what is happening here. So then we have, what is this kid's name? I think Rachel's gone from the chat here, but if you want to help me out with this kid's name that invites her to bowling, I would appreciate it. He is... Oh, she says she's here. Okay, good. Sorry. It says usually if there's like a bubble for somebody being here, but that bubble's not there. Piz. Right. Thank you. There's this whole thing where he, like, asks her bowling, and it seems like he's asking her on a date, but then he sort of is like, oh, well, and Wallace is going to come, and, like, you know, a whole gang of people's going to come. And so she goes and invites Parker and invites Logan. And then they three show up, but nobody else has come except for Piz. And it's, like, kind of awkward to begin with. And Parker, understandably, thinks this is a setup, which of course you would. I mean, 100%. And is very kind of cranky about it. But then as the night wears on, she begins to have a much better time. And she starts to be like, you know what? Actually, I was all salty because I felt like you were trying to foist this guy on me. But I got to admit, he's actually pretty cute. And would you find out what he thinks of me? And Veronica, for her part, is not super keen on being the go-between person. She thinks that this feels very grade school. But she agrees to do it because this girl has been through some shit. Veronica feels partially responsible, even though she absolutely should not. And she decides to wingman her. And she goes and talks to Piz, and Piz tells her that this girl isn't his type. I am soups curious what that's about. Because, I mean, from day one, it's been obvious that Piz is kind of into Veronica, right? And I feel like if we're talking about types, usually types means appearance. And Parker is very similar to Veronica in terms of type. Both very slender, white girls, blonde hair, kind of preppy aesthetic. Very, very similar. And him saying she's not his type, if I didn't know that he had been sort of into Veronica, I would think this was him being like not wanting to confide that he's gay, but kind of hinting towards that. But I don't get that vibe at all. I don't think that's what's actually happening here after seeing the way that he reacted to Veronica. So I'm kind of concerned that it's going to turn out he doesn't want to date her because she was raped. And if that's a thing, I'm just really going to need to shut this whole thing down. I hope y'all are ready, because I don't know what else could be going on there. Is it the fact that she was ragging on him a lot during the bowling thing and he was like taking it personally and he felt like she was just a little bit too loud and she was too forward? Maybe that's it. But the fact that she is not his type is not news that Veronica carries back. She obviously is hesitant to just put it that baldly to Parker. And so Parker sort of decides to continue pursuing things. And that is when they turn up at the radio station and he seems incredibly uncomfortable. And this is when they wind up running into Mercer, who sort of jogs her memory. Now, there's also another possibility here that I almost don't even want to say because I just so do not want this to be the case. But there's the possibility that Piz is the rapist. And that he is just really weirded out at the idea of trying to legitimately date a girl that he had assaulted. But I am not going to entertain that theory any further than the end of this sentence. So, moving right along. Let's talk about Wallace. I only have 7 minutes left, but I think that's perfect. So, I really liked Wallace's story this episode. Wallace is still dealing with engineering being incredibly difficult. And he has this scholarship for basketball that he came to the school on. And he's getting so good that he could be the starter. And that's a big deal, apparently. But he did turn himself in for cheating to the professor. The fact that he turned himself in is probably the only factor that causes the dean to be merciful to him the way that he is. Because he gives Wallace the choice of either continuing in the class and taking the 0 on the test and then struggling to make a passing grade, or dropping the class free and clear and suffering no penalties for it, which is honestly just about the best possible deal that you could ask for. Wallace is a little bit offended when they are talking about him during this meeting, and his professor says something about how he had been hesitant to let Wallace into the class because he's an athlete, and the fact that Wallace doesn't have very high standardized test scores, and that he should have known better than to accept him. And Wallace sort of throws that in the teacher's face later, which I kind of see that was not the best way to handle that situation, Professor. Like, you could have been more tactful. It might be literally true, but there are ways to say things that don't just come across as like, well, I should have known you weren't shit, which is sort of how that sounds. So Wallace gets like a day or two to sort of contemplate what he wants to do. And he's trying to, like, he's sitting in his room at one point, looking at this little plane that's, a model airplane when Veronica comes in. And he shares with her how frustrated he is because this is something that he really wanted to do. And it's the only thing that he's ever, like, felt like he really cared about. And because he cared, he thought it would be easy, is sort of the subtext there. But it isn't. It doesn't come naturally. This is something that he genuinely needs to work at. And this is a scene that could kind of go either way. Wallace is very young. So there have been times in my life where I'm like, this is the only thing I cared about, and it's not going the way I want, and now I don't know what to do. And then I look back and I'm like, well, that just wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. I thought it was at the time. I genuinely believed that. But I was wrong. That wasn't meant for me. And part of me feels like maybe that's the case for Wallace. You know, I understand when you have limited experience in the world, you only have so much information about yourself to go on to make your calls and choose what you want to do. And let's be honest, choosing people Wallace's, like forcing people their age to make a decision on what they want to major in and pursue as a career for the rest of their lives is truly lunacy. So I would not be mad at him at all if he thought that he wanted to do a thing and then it turned out, oh, actually, that's kind of not for me. But we are watching a show that often tries to have a message, in quotes, and a lot of the messaging out there for people when they are pursuing their dreams is never give up. The thing is, I don't agree with that. Giving up is fine. You have to give up to pick up another thing. And sometimes that is exactly what you should do, is pick something else up. So I am not somebody who endorses the never give up mentality at all. I just think that that is the kind of thing that you say when you don't have a whole lot of imagination about how things could work out, or you don't have a lot of faith that things can work out. But I understand that the show wants to have him focus on academics over sports. And that is what he winds up doing. He takes a test, he gets a D, or it might be a quiz. And he realizes after like having really studied for it, oversleeping for practice and kind of getting yelled at by his coach, he realizes that he just can't do both. That he is going to have to buckle down and really study and commit a lot of his time to figuring this all out if he wants to do well. And so that is what he chooses to do, is to take a semester off from playing. And thankfully, his coach allows him to keep his scholarship and is like, you just have to be prepared for the fact that you're probably not going to be able to play on the court at all this year if you take this whole semester off. That is going to set you way behind. And he accepts that and understands. And I think this is the kind of thing that is such a tough call, because being an athlete, doing anything, honestly, for a living that is hugely dependent on your physicality, whether that be dancing, sports, there's always going to be this expiration date. There will be a point at which your body can no longer sustain the kind of performance that is expected of you. And meanwhile, behind you come younger, fresher people who can do what you do better now. And because of that, I always have a tendency to want people to choose something more stable for a living because it feels safer. On the flip side, you are only physically able to do certain things for a short period in your life. And if you go into it knowing that it has an expiration date and aware of that and determined to enjoy yourself and get as much out of it as you can while you can, I do see the advantage in that. There is a mentality that you have to have, though, and depending absolutely everything on your physical performance, that is a very precarious way to live. So I like overall his decision to pull back on the sports and decide that he really wants to, like, he's not interested in becoming a basketball player for a living. Engineering is what he wants to do. And so it really, in the end, is sort of an easy decision for him, and he knows what he wants to do. So hopefully that works out for him. And I'm glad that he gets to keep his scholarship. And I hope that, like, his interest and real attempts at doing his best begin to pay off for him. So I think that's everything. I think I covered the whole episode. Thank you again so much to Rachel for being in the chat and feeding me everybody's names. Thank you to Agnes for commissioning this episode. And reminder, guys, I had mentioned before that because of my wedding, I was going to have many reduced opening slots, but I have had to postpone my wedding until next year. So I have opened up some slots in November and December because of that. I'm still going to be taking some time off around Christmas and Thanksgiving, but now there's going to be, oh, Rachel says I hadn't heard. I'm so sorry. Yeah. It's like, it's disappointing to push it back, but to be honest, things have been working out really well now that I've pushed it back. So it's turned out to be a blessing, but it was a hard decision to make. But on the plus side, this allows me to do more coverage later this year and manage to sort of wrap up on some seasons of things. So the last episode that I have booked for this season is episode 12, which will be on October 13th. And then after that, it looks like there is nothing. So I am booked into November at this point. No, mid-October, almost into November. So just giving you guys all a heads up on where I'm at with that. And, keep an eye out for open slots if you are trying to continue on this season. And if you're interested in just hearing me yell at the writers, you know how I do. All right, guys, I will see you soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.